The day I watched my brother shake the hand of the university president and accept his diploma, I felt nothing. Not pride, not joy, not even the lingering resentment that had burned through me for 4 years. Just an empty hollow in my chest where love used to live. I sat in that crowded auditorium surrounded by cheering families, and all I could think was that the person walking across that stage was a stranger wearing my brother's face. We had entered those campus gates as brothers, bound by blood and 18 years of shared memories. We left as strangers, connected only by the wreckage he left behind and the quiet justice I had finally served. My name is Marcus Reed, and this is the story of how my own brother tried to destroy my future, and how I made sure he faced every consequence he deserved. Growing up, Tyler was everything I wanted to be. He was the firstborn, the golden child, the one our parents held up as the standard I should aspire to reach. Our father was a mechanic who worked 60-hour weeks to keep the lights on, and our mother cleaned houses on the wealthy side of town. We lived in a small 3-bedroom house in Bristol, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business and dreams were something you watched other people achieve on television. But Tyler, he always seemed destined for more. He was charming in a way that made teachers forget he turned in late assignments and made girls forgive him for forgetting their names. He had this smile, you know the kind, where you believed whatever came out of his mouth simply because it was accompanied by that effortless grin. I was different. I was the quiet one, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. While Tyler coasted on natural charisma, I buried myself in textbooks and football practice. I was good at sports, really good, and by the time I was 17, scouts from several universities had started showing up to my matches. For the first time in my life, I had something that was mine alone, something Tyler could not simply charm his way into having. Our parents were proud of both of us, but there was always this unspoken hierarchy. Tyler was the one they talked about at family gatherings. Tyler was the one whose accomplishments hung on the refrigerator longest. When I got accepted to Westbrook University on a full athletic scholarship, my mother cried and said she always knew I could do it. But in the same breath, she reminded me that Tyler was already there, finishing his first year, and how wonderful it would be that he could show me around and look after me. I remember the night before we left for my freshman year. Tyler and I sat on the roof of our house, something we had done since we were kids, passing a bag of crisps between us and staring at the stars. He threw his arm around my shoulder and told me that college was going to be the best years of our lives. He said we were going to dominate Westbrook together. The Reed brothers, he called us, unstoppable. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The first few weeks of university felt like a dream. Tyler introduced me to his friends, took me to parties I probably should not have attended, and made sure everyone knew that Marcus Reed was his little brother. At first, I thought it was generosity. I thought he was proud of me, excited to share this chapter of his life with family. He helped me navigate the confusing landscape of university bureaucracy, showed me where the best study spots were, and even helped me move into my dormitory, while our parents stood in the parking lot crying happy tears. But something shifted when football practice started. I had been recruited specifically for my position, and the coaches made it clear from day one that they expected me to earn a starting spot before the season ended. The older players resented me for it. Fresh meat with a scholarship and too much confidence, they said. But I proved myself on that field day after day, and by the fourth week, I was not just starting. I was becoming the player people talked about. Local sports journalists began mentioning my name. Students who had never spoken to me suddenly wanted to be seen with me. And Tyler, who had never been particularly athletic, started looking at me differently. It was subtle at first. A comment here and there about how lucky I was. A joke about how I was finally stepping out of his shadow, delivered with that smile that no longer reached his eyes. I told myself I was imagining things. This was my brother. We had shared bunk beds and chicken pox, and the grief of losing our grandfather. He would never resent me for succeeding, but I was wrong. The first real sign came 2 months into the semester. I had been working on an economics paper for weeks, a research project that counted for 30% of my final grade. I had poured hours into that paper, staying up late in the library while my teammates went out drinking. I saved it on my laptop and on a USB drive because I was paranoid about losing my work. The night before it was due, I went to open the file and found it corrupted. Both copies. The document would not open no matter what I tried. I panicked. I stayed up all night trying to recover the file, but nothing worked. I ended up submitting a barely coherent version I had thrown together in 6 hours of desperate typing. My professor was unimpressed. I went from being on track for a top grade to barely scraping a pass in that assignment. Tyler was sympathetic when I told him. He said technology was unreliable and that I should have printed a backup copy. He offered to buy me dinner to cheer me up. I thought he was being a good brother. It never occurred to me to wonder why he had borrowed my laptop the previous afternoon to print something for one of his classes. The second incident happened a month later. I had started dating a girl named Emma, a sweet art history student who worked at the campus coffee shop. We had only been together for 3 weeks, but I liked her. She was genuine in a way that felt rare in the superficial social world of university. She did not care about my football status or my growing campus reputation. She liked me for me. One Friday night, I went to pick her up from her shift and found her crying behind the counter. She told me she could not see me anymore. When I asked why, she said someone had shown her messages I had supposedly sent to another girl. Explicit messages where I bragged about cheating and made fun of Emma's appearance. She would not show me the messages. She would not even look at me. She just asked me to leave and never contact her again. I was devastated and confused. I had never sent those messages. I did not even know who this other girl was. I tried to explain, but Emma had already made up her mind. She blocked my number, and by Monday, half the campus believed I was a cheater who had humiliated a sweet girl who had done nothing wrong. Tyler was the one who consoled me. He told me that university relationships were complicated and that I would find someone better. He took me to a party that weekend and introduced me to new people, trying to distract me from the heartbreak. I thought he was being the best brother anyone could ask for. I did not find out until much later that the messages had come from a fake account created using screenshots Tyler had taken from my phone, carefully edited and manipulated to destroy everything I had built with Emma. My reputation took a hit, but football kept me anchored. The coaches did not care about campus drama as long as I performed on the field, and I channeled all my frustration into training. By the end of my freshman year, I was the starting player everyone had predicted I would become. Sports journalists wrote articles about my potential. There was even talk of professional scouts attending games the following season. Tyler graduated from university that year with a degree in business administration and, to everyone's surprise, announced he was staying for a postgraduate program. He said he wanted to be near family while he figured out his next steps. Our parents were thrilled. They thought it was wonderful that both their boys would be at the same university, looking out for each other. I should have questioned it. Tyler had always talked about moving to London, about big city jobs and expensive flats and a life far away from our working-class roots. Why would he suddenly want to stay in a university town, living in a cramped postgraduate apartment, when he could be chasing his dreams elsewhere? But I trusted him. That was my first mistake, and it would not be my last. Sophomore year began with promise. I had new classes, new teammates, and a fresh start after the Emma situation had finally died down. I had also met someone new over the summer, a girl named Sophie Brennan who was studying law. She was different from anyone I had ever dated. She was sharp and observant, the kind of person who noticed details others missed. She asked questions that made me think, and she never accepted easy answers. She challenged me in ways that made me want to be better. Sophie and Tyler did not get along. She never said anything directly, but I could see it in the way she watched him. When Tyler would make his charming comments or tell his elaborate stories, Sophie would smile politely, but her eyes stayed suspicious. After he left, she would ask me questions. Did Tyler always dominate conversations like that? Had I noticed how he redirected attention to himself whenever I started talking about my achievements? Did it not seem strange that he had changed his entire life plan just to stay close to me? I defended him, of course. I told Sophie she did not understand our relationship, that Tyler was just protective and supportive. I told her she was reading too much into things because she did not have siblings and did not understand the dynamic. I wish I had listened to her. The football season that year was my breakthrough. We won match after match, and I was at the center of every victory. The local news started featuring stories about me. A few national publications picked up the coverage. And then the thing I had dreamed about since I was a kid actually happened. A scout from a professional team attended one of our matches and asked to meet with me afterward. His name was Richard Hayes, and he represented one of the most prestigious teams in the country. He told me I had raw talent that he rarely saw in university players. He said if I kept performing at this level, there would be a contract waiting for me after graduation. He gave me his card and told me to stay in touch, to keep my head down and stay focused. I floated home that night. I called my parents and listened to my mother cry with joy. I called Sophie and celebrated over a late dinner at the only decent restaurant near campus. And then I made the mistake of telling Tyler. He congratulated me with that familiar smile. He said he was proud of me, that I deserved this after all my hard work. He opened a bottle of wine and insisted we toast to my future success. But something in his eyes was different that night. Something cold and calculating that I had never noticed before, or maybe had always refused to see. 2 weeks later, I was called into the athletics director's office. The meeting was formal and uncomfortable from the moment I sat down. The director was joined by the head coach and a representative from the university's disciplinary board. They told me there had been an anonymous report accusing me of using performance-enhancing substances. They said they had received supposed evidence, photographs of me purchasing something from a known dealer near campus, and testimony from someone who claimed to have seen me using banned substances in the locker room. I was stunned. I had never taken anything stronger than paracetamol in my life. I trained hard, ate right, and slept enough hours to let my body recover naturally. The accusation was absurd, and I told them so. But they were required to investigate. University policy mandated a suspension from competition until the matter was resolved. I would have to submit to drug testing and a full inquiry. My name would be kept confidential unless the allegations were proven true, but in a university this size, secrets did not stay secret for long. Within 3 days, everyone knew. The whispers followed me across campus. Former teammates avoided eye contact. Students who had cheered my name from the stands now looked at me with disappointment and disgust. The scout, Richard Hayes, sent a polite email saying he would need to pause any discussions until the investigation concluded. My future, which had seemed so bright just weeks earlier, was suddenly hanging by a thread. I passed every drug test they gave me. Every single one came back clean. But the investigation dragged on because the accusers kept providing more supposed evidence, more photographs, more anonymous statements. The disciplinary board said they had to take all allegations seriously, no matter how many tests I passed. Sophie was the one who first suggested something was wrong. She pointed out that the photographs were strangely convenient, always catching me at angles where my face was visible, but the supposed dealer was not. She noted that the anonymous testimony used specific phrases and details that seemed designed to be credible rather than genuine. She asked me who knew my schedule well enough to track my movements, who had access to my social circle, who benefited from my downfall. I did not want to believe it. Even as she laid out the logic, even as the pieces started fitting together in a pattern I did not want to see, I resisted the obvious conclusion. This was my brother, my blood, the person I had trusted more than anyone else in the world. But Sophie was relentless. She convinced me to look at the evidence with fresh eyes, to examine the metadata on the photographs the disciplinary board had received. I did not know how to do that myself, but Sophie had a friend in the computer science department who owed her a favor. What we found changed everything. The photographs had been taken on dates that corresponded exactly with times I remembered Tyler borrowing my jacket or my bag, times he had shown up unexpectedly and insisted on walking with me across campus. The camera used had a specific signature embedded in the file, and Sophie's friend traced it to a phone model that matched the one Tyler had bought 6 months earlier. It was not proof, not the kind that would hold up in a formal proceeding. But it was enough for me to start looking at my brother with the suspicion he deserved. I did not confront him immediately. Sophie advised against it. She said that people like Tyler, people who were capable of sustained deception, would simply deny everything and become more careful. She said the only way to expose him was to let him think he was winning, while we gathered real evidence. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I continued to treat Tyler like my brother. I continued to accept his sympathy about the investigation, to let him console me when I felt low, to thank him for standing by me when everyone else had turned away. Every word of gratitude felt like swallowing glass, but I kept my face neutral and my suspicions hidden. Meanwhile, Sophie and I began documenting everything. We tracked Tyler's movements and noticed patterns. He always seemed to know where I would be before I told anyone. He always asked specific questions about my schedule, my teammates, my relationship with the coaching staff. He had inserted himself into every aspect of my life so thoroughly that I had never noticed how unnatural it was. Sophie also started investigating Tyler's postgraduate program and discovered something that made my stomach drop. He had not actually enrolled in any classes. He had told everyone, including our parents, that he was pursuing a master's degree in business. But according to university records, Tyler Reed was not registered as a student at all. He was simply living in town, maintaining the facade of academic pursuit, while actually doing something else entirely. What he was doing, we eventually discovered, was building a social media presence. He had created accounts under a pseudonym, positioning himself as a sports commentator and talent scout. He wrote articles about university athletics, made connections with actual scouts and agents, and was slowly building credibility in a world he had no legitimate access to. His strategy became clear. If he could damage my reputation enough to derail my professional prospects, he could then position himself as the person who discovered the next great talent. He would take credit for other athletes while I faded into obscurity, another cautionary tale about drugs and wasted potential. He was not just trying to sabotage me, he was trying to replace me. The revelation broke something inside me. This was not jealousy or sibling rivalry taken too far. This was calculated, sustained, and deliberate destruction. My own brother had spent years positioning himself to tear down everything I had worked for, and he had done it with a smile on his face and words of encouragement on his lips. I wanted to expose him immediately. I wanted to call our parents and tell them everything. I wanted to storm into his apartment and make him admit what he had done. But Sophie held me back. She reminded me that exposure without proof would make me look paranoid and desperate. Tyler was charming. He was believable. If I accused him without undeniable evidence, people would assume I was looking for someone to blame for my own failures. The accusation would destroy what was left of my reputation while Tyler walked away clean. Instead, Sophie suggested we build a case that could not be denied. She started reaching out to people Tyler had wronged in the past, classmates and former friends who might have their own stories. And slowly, a pattern emerged. There was a girl from Tyler's undergraduate years who had been accused of plagiarism in a paper she swore she had written herself. The supposed evidence came from an anonymous source, and she had always suspected Tyler was involved because the paper had been for a class they shared and he had unexpectedly earned the highest mark after she was expelled. There was a roommate who had lost a job opportunity after someone sent emails to the company making false accusations about his character. The roommate had no proof, but the timing had coincided exactly with a falling out he had with Tyler over a girl they had both been interested in. There was even a cousin I barely remembered who had been disinherited from a small family inheritance after Tyler convinced an elderly aunt that the cousin had been stealing from her. The cousin had protested innocence for years, but no one believed him because Tyler's story had been so convincing. Pattern after pattern, victim after victim. Tyler had spent years perfecting the art of destruction, always staying just far enough in the shadows that his fingerprints never showed. I was not his first target. I was just his biggest one. Armed with this knowledge, Sophie and I developed a plan. We could not undo the investigation or immediately clear my name, but we could set a trap that would force Tyler to expose himself. I started dropping hints that I was giving up. I told Tyler I was thinking about leaving university, about walking away from football entirely. I said the investigation had broken my spirit, and I did not see the point in fighting anymore. I watched his face carefully as I spoke, and I saw it. The flicker of triumph he could not quite hide. The satisfaction of a predator watching prey finally stopped struggling. He tried to talk me out of it, of course. He said I should not let anonymous accusations destroy my dreams. But his words were hollow, performed rather than felt. He wanted me to give up. He had been working toward this moment for years. I told him I had one last meeting with the disciplinary board, a final chance to clear my name before I made my decision. I said I did not have any real defense, that I was going to go in there and accept whatever they decided. Tyler nodded sympathetically and said he would be there for me no matter what happened. What he did not know was that Sophie had spent the past month building a relationship with one of the administrators on the disciplinary board. She had explained our suspicions and presented the circumstantial evidence we had gathered. The administrator was skeptical at first but agreed to do something unusual. She arranged for Tyler to receive an anonymous message suggesting that the board was close to uncovering the identity of the person who had filed the false accusations, and that serious legal consequences were being considered for filing fraudulent claims. The message was sent 2 days before my final meeting. Tyler panicked. He did not show it to me, of course. To my face, he remained the supportive brother who only wanted the best for me. But Sophie had a friend who worked at the mobile phone shop Tyler frequented, and that friend confirmed that Tyler had come in asking about ways to permanently delete data from his phone and laptop. He was scared. He was trying to cover his tracks, but it was too late. Sophie's administrator contact had also arranged for a quiet examination of the original anonymous accusations filed against me. Under closer inspection, patterns emerged that investigators had missed the first time. The email addresses used had been created from IP addresses that traced back to Tyler's apartment building. The photographs included subtle reflections that, when enhanced, showed the outline of someone who matched Tyler's height and build. And one of the anonymous witnesses, when re-interviewed more carefully, admitted that they had been approached by someone matching Tyler's description and offered payment to say they had seen me using banned substances. The witness was willing to testify. The morning of my final disciplinary meeting, I walked into that room expecting a fight. Instead, I found Tyler already seated at the table. He looked confused and then frightened when he saw me enter. The administrator explained that new evidence had emerged and that the nature of the meeting had changed. What followed was the most satisfying hour of my life. The evidence was presented systematically: the digital traces, the witness testimony, the patterns of behavior that connected Tyler to not just my case, but to the destroyed lives of half a dozen other people. Tyler denied everything at first, but his denials became weaker as each piece of evidence was laid out. His charming smile faded. His confident demeanor crumbled. By the end, he was not even trying to defend himself. He was just staring at the table, silent and defeated. I spoke last. I looked at my brother, this person I had loved and trusted for my entire life, and I said everything I had been holding back for months. I told him I knew about the corrupted file. I knew about the fake messages to Emma. I knew about the photographs and the false witnesses and the entire elaborate scheme to destroy my future so he could steal it for himself. I told him that every moment of comfort he had offered me, every word of sympathy, every brotherly hug, had been a lie. I told him I had loved him unconditionally, and he had used that love as a weapon against me. He did not apologize. Even then, facing undeniable exposure, Tyler did not have the decency to admit what he had done. He sat in silence, jaw clenched, refusing to give me even that small acknowledgement. It did not matter. The consequences came anyway. Tyler was banned from the university grounds permanently. He was referred to local law enforcement for filing false accusations, which carried potential criminal charges. The disciplinary board issued a formal statement clearing my name entirely and condemning the fraudulent claims made against me. The scout, Richard Hayes, received a copy of the findings and called me personally to apologize for ever doubting my character. But the exposure went further than the university. Sophie had quietly compiled our evidence into a documented timeline and shared it with a journalist who covered sports ethics stories. The resulting article did not name Tyler directly, but it described a pattern of fraudulent accusations targeting promising athletes and traced those accusations to a fake sports commentary account that Tyler had been building under his pseudonym. People in the industry started connecting the dots. Tyler's carefully constructed online presence collapsed overnight. Our parents were devastated. They did not want to believe it at first. They made excuses, suggested there had been some misunderstanding, tried to convince themselves that their golden child could not possibly have done these things. But the evidence was overwhelming, and eventually, they had to accept the truth. Their oldest son was not the person they thought he was. He had never been that person. I wish I could say I felt vindicated watching Tyler's world fall apart. I wish I could say there was satisfaction in seeing him face consequences for years of manipulation and cruelty. But the truth is more complicated than that. Tyler was my brother. Despite everything he had done, despite every betrayal and every lie, part of me still remembered the person I thought he was. The brother who had taught me to ride a bike. The brother who had stayed up with me all night when I was sick as a child. The brother who had been my hero before he became my enemy. Losing that person, truly accepting that he had never really existed, was a grief I was not prepared for. I mourned the brother I had believed in, even as I celebrated being free of the brother he actually was. My football career recovered. The professional contract that Richard Hayes had hinted at became reality my senior year. I graduated with good marks, a signed deal, and a future that Tyler had tried so hard to steal. Sophie and I stayed together, our relationship strengthened by everything we had survived. She went on to law school, driven partly by our experience to become someone who could help other people escape the traps that manipulative people set. Tyler moved away from the area after his criminal case was resolved, with a plea deal that included probation and community service. Our parents maintained contact with him, but the relationship was never the same. They looked at him differently now, suspicious of his charm in a way they had never been before. He was not welcome at family gatherings when I was present, and gradually, the invitations stopped coming at all. I saw him one last time, 3 years after everything happened. I was visiting our parents for the holidays, and Tyler showed up unannounced. He looked different, thinner and tired, the confident swagger replaced by something closer to defeat. He asked if we could talk privately. We sat on the front steps of our childhood home, the same house where we had once climbed onto the roof and dreamed about the future. Tyler stared at his hands for a long time before speaking. He told me he was sorry. He said he had spent years in therapy trying to understand why he had done what he did, and he still did not fully know. He said there was something broken inside him, something that could not stand watching anyone else succeed without feeling like their success was stolen from him. He asked if I could ever forgive him. I thought about the question for a long time. I thought about the corrupted file and Emma and the false accusations, and the months I had spent believing my brother loved me while he systematically tried to destroy everything I had worked for. I thought about the other victims, the people whose lives he had damaged before he came for mine. I thought about the grief of losing a brother to his own choices. I told him the truth. I said I hoped he found whatever healing he was looking for. I said I genuinely wanted him to become a better person, not for my sake, but for his own, and for anyone else he might encounter in the future. But forgiveness was not something I could give him. Not because I was holding on to anger, but because forgiveness implied restoration, and what we had could never be restored. The brother I had loved was gone, replaced by the reality of who Tyler actually was. I could accept that reality. I could even wish him well, but I could not pretend that our relationship could ever go back to what I had believed it was. Tyler nodded slowly. He did not argue or try to convince me. He just stood up, told me he understood, and walked away. I have not seen him since. Sometimes I think about those first weeks at university, when Tyler showed me around campus and introduced me to his friends and promised we were going to dominate together. I think about how excited I was, how honored I felt to have a brother who wanted to include me in his world. I think about all the signs I missed because I loved him too much to see clearly. The experience changed me in ways I am still discovering. I am slower to trust now, more careful about who I let into my inner circle. I pay attention to patterns of behavior rather than words, watching what people do rather than what they say. I have learned that charm without substance is often a warning sign, that people who seem too good to be true usually are. But I have also learned that betrayal does not have to destroy you. It can clarify things instead. It can show you who your real allies are and what truly matters. Sophie stood by me when everyone else turned away. My teammates who stuck around during the investigation became lifelong friends. My parents, despite their pain over Tyler, chose to support me and accept the truth. I emerged from those 4 years stronger than I entered them. Not because of Tyler, but in spite of him. Every obstacle he threw in my path forced me to work harder, think smarter, and become more resilient. He wanted to break me, but instead, he forged me into someone he could never defeat. My professional career has exceeded every expectation. The contract Richard Hayes offered was just the beginning. I have played in matches I dreamed about as a child, worn jerseys I used to pin to my bedroom wall, and achieved things that once seemed impossible for a kid from a working-class neighborhood in Bristol. Every success feels sweeter because I know someone tried very hard to prevent it. Sophie and I got married 2 years ago. When I gave my wedding speech, I talked about the importance of finding someone who sees you clearly, who notices the details others miss, who has the courage to tell you difficult truths even when you do not want to hear them. I talked about how the hardest moments in life are easier when you face them with someone who truly has your back. I did not mention Tyler by name. I did not need to. Everyone at that wedding knew the story. They knew what Sophie and I had survived together. And they knew that our relationship was built on the kind of trust that Tyler had tried to exploit and destroy, but never could. Looking back now, I understand that Tyler was never really my rival. He was his own worst enemy. His envy and manipulation might have damaged me temporarily, but they destroyed him permanently. Every choice he made to undermine me was a choice that moved him further from the life he claimed to want. He sacrificed his relationships, his reputation, his career, and his family on the altar of his own insecurity. There is a certain justice in that. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies where villains get spectacular punishments and victims get standing ovations. This is quieter, more permanent. Tyler has to wake up every day knowing that every bridge he burned was set on fire by his own hands. He has to live with the knowledge that his parents will never fully trust him, that his reputation is permanently stained, that the brother who once loved him unconditionally no longer has space for him in his life. I carry the lessons of that betrayal with me, but I refuse to carry the bitterness. I have built a life that Tyler tried to prevent, surrounded by people who value honesty and loyalty and genuine connection. I have a career I love and a marriage that grows stronger every year. I have peace, the kind that comes from knowing you faced the worst someone could throw at you and came out the other side intact. We entered college as brothers. We left as strangers. And while that is a sad truth, it is also a liberating one. Not every relationship is meant to survive. Not every bond deserves to be maintained. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is recognize when someone you love has become someone you cannot trust, and make the difficult choice to protect yourself. Tyler taught me that family is not just about blood. It is about behavior. It is about how people treat you when they think no one is watching. It is about whether they build you up or tear you down, whether they celebrate your successes or secretly hope you fail. By that definition, Tyler stopped being my family long before I knew it. And by that definition, the family I have chosen, Sophie, my true friends, the teammates who stood by me, my parents who eventually chose truth over denial, is stronger and more real than anything Tyler and I ever shared. I still love football. Every time I step onto that field, I remember the kid who practiced in muddy parks and dreamed about playing professionally. I remember the first time a scout said my name. I remember the moment I thought everything was lost and the moment I realized I could fight back. Every match is a reminder that I refuse to let someone else define my story. Tyler wanted to write the ending of my life. He wanted me to fade into obscurity while he claimed center stage. He spent years planning and manipulating, sacrificing his own integrity in pursuit of my downfall. But here is the truth Tyler never understood. You cannot steal someone's life by destroying them. You can only steal your own. Every lie he told was a piece of his own soul traded away. Every manipulation was a relationship he could never repair. Every scheme was another step toward the isolation and regret that now define his existence. I do not know where Tyler is today. I do not know if he ever found the help he needed, or if he continued down the path of manipulation and self-destruction. I hope, genuinely and without resentment, that he found peace. Not because he deserves it, but because holding on to hope for others, even those who hurt you, is better than holding on to hate. But his peace or lack of it is no longer my concern. I spent enough of my life worrying about Tyler, wondering what he thought, seeking his approval, believing his lies. Those years are over. My energy now goes to the people who have earned it, to the dreams that are still unfolding, to the life I have built on foundations of honesty and trust. If you are listening to this and recognizing pieces of your own story, if there is someone in your life who claims to love you while secretly working against you, I want you to know something important. The betrayal is not your fault. It does not say anything about your worth or your judgment. Trusting someone you love is supposed to be safe. When that trust is violated, the responsibility belongs entirely to the person who violated it. But I also want you to know that you have more power than you realize. You can survive what feels unsurvivable. You can rebuild what seems destroyed beyond repair. You can emerge from betrayal stronger, wiser, and more capable of recognizing the difference between those who truly love you and those who only pretend. The ending of this story is not revenge, though consequences were certainly served. The ending is not even exposure, though the truth was definitely revealed. The real ending is simpler than that. The real ending is that I am happy. Despite everything Tyler did, despite every attempt to derail my future and destroy my spirit, I found my way to a life filled with purpose and love and genuine connection. He tried to make me small, and instead, I grew. He tried to make me doubt myself, and instead, I learned exactly who I am and what I am capable of. That is the ultimate consequence for someone like Tyler. Not prison or poverty or public humiliation, though elements of all three touched his life. The ultimate consequence is knowing that his victim thrived anyway. It is knowing that every dark scheme and every whispered lie ultimately failed. It is knowing that the person he tried to break is out there, living well, proving daily that his power over me was always an illusion. We entered college as brothers. We left as strangers. And in that strange, painful journey from trust to betrayal to justice, I discovered something Tyler will never understand. Sometimes losing a brother is how you find yourself. I am Marcus Reed. I am a professional footballer, a husband, a son, and a survivor. I am someone who was betrayed by the person closest to him and chose to fight back, not with cruelty, but with truth. I am proof that even the most elaborate schemes cannot destroy someone who refuses to be destroyed. And I am finally, completely, and permanently free.